Morning, Commissioner.
Morning.
Commissioner, do we have, I see you and Varney are the two I was expecting. So is there anybody else we're waiting for on your side?
I think Pat McDonough from facilities might join us too as well, in case there are facility related questions.
Okay. Do you want to just, you or Chantal, someone just check and let me know? Because I've been trying to get going as soon as we've got the whole presentation team, just because.
Yep.
Got a lot of these.
Well, if he's not here another time, we can go ahead and get started. I can do my best, and anything else, I can always get back to any of the counselors on any questions, anything.
Yeah, well, it'll take me a minute to do the launching
formality.
What about and Michael Kozu, is that a member of the public or with your team?
Michael Kozu, it's actually a neighborhood advocate. I think he's from Project Right, so he might be testifying.
Yeah, all right, Mike, great. So we'll do public testimony after the presentation and questions, but we see you there. Okay. Just gonna tell counselors that I'm about to get going, so we'll like 2 more minutes.
Okay, no problem. Hi, Liz.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. I owe you a follow-up to Jackson, man. We've been making some good progress, so I'll probably follow up with you sometime next week and some.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously it's very high up on my list of concerns, so I look forward to talking with you.
It's very high on mine too as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right, I see we've got Pat with us here. Great. Okay, so now I think I'm going to get started. We're all ready, Candace or Carrie?
Ready to go when you are, Madam Chair.
Great, excellent. All right. I'm calling this hearing of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee to order. For the record, my name is Kennedy Bach. I'm the District 8 City Councilor and also the Chair of the Ways and Means Committee. This hearing is being recorded. It's being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. It's part of the 35 working sessions and hearings that the council is hosting on different aspects of the city's budget proposed for FY22. You can find that full hearing schedule at boston.gov/council-budget, boston.gov/council-budget. And you're always welcome to testify at the end of these department hearings. So you can find out how to do that at boston.gov/budget-testify. You can also shoot us an email at ccc.wm for Ways and Means at boston.gov. And we'll take written testimony. You can go online and upload a video, which we can play at the end of a hearing, or you can come and join us in the Zoom, as I see a few people have today, and testify in person. We're also having 2 dedicated hearings focused on public testimony, one on May 25th at 6 p.m. focused on BPS, and one on June 3rd at 6 p.m. focused on any aspect of the budget. So folks are welcome to that. Or tweet at us with the hashtag BOSSBudget, BOSBudget. We'd love to hear from you. Today's hearing is on docket 0524 to 0526, orders for the FY22 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations for the school department and for other post-employment benefits. Docket 0527 to 0528, orders for capital fund transfer appropriations. Docket 0529 to 0531, orders for the capital budget, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. And docket 0537, order authorizing a limit for the Boston Center for Youth and Families revolving fund for FY22. And this is our hearing focused on BCYF, also known as Boston Centers for Youth and Families. And we're joined here today by the BCYF Commissioner, William Morales, Varney Jules, the Finance Manager, and also I think supported by Pat McDonough from PFD. So grateful to all of them. Grateful also to my colleagues who are with us, Councillor Michelle Wu at large, Councillor Liz Braden, District 9, and Councillor Matt O'Malley, District 6. Yeah, and without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Commissioner Morales and we'll jump right in. Commissioner, you're muted.
I think that's going to be everybody's new last name, right? You muted, right? We're all going to be muted. I want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity, especially you, Councillor Bach. Just to make a quick correction, Pat McDonough is actually with BCYF as the facility director, not with PFD. Even though I think he lives there more than he lives here, but just wanted to make sure that we have that correction for the record. I want to thank you for this opportunity to present our BCYF fiscal year 22 budget. I am honored to be here before you as the commissioner of BCYF. I would like to thank Mayor Janey for her support of BCYF, and I also like to thank Chief Martinez for bringing the Human Services Cabinet together to ensure that we are working together and collaboratively on issues that are important to everyone in the city. Under his leadership, we have intentionally been supporting and guiding some of the most vulnerable populations we serve towards better access to resources and information to help put them on the path towards stability. On top of that, I also want to thank all the 400 employees that work for BCYF day in and day out. When COVID-19 hit, bringing in unforeseen issues and restrictions, we had to quickly shift from providing programs, events, and activities to helping our families with the most basic needs. Some of those things that we transitioned into doing were distributing over 200,000 meals at 17 youth meal distribution sites, along with 4 adult meal distribution sites as well. We delivered over 1,300 meals to financially challenged and homebound residents throughout the city. We supported multiple city departments with translation services, assisting residents to help access employment benefits, and developing and releasing the BCYF Needs Assessment Survey to help us prioritize our initiatives going forward through this pandemic. We distribute over 2,000 BCYF family care packages, and with the support of the Red Sox, we provided some back-to-school totes for many of our students in our neighborhoods. And when things started to look better, as we approached last summer, we set up safety protocols as well and registration systems so that we can open our outdoor pools and offer in-person and virtual programming. Just being able to provide a little bit of normal for our families gave us all the boosts that we needed. I would like to take a minute to just share some of the other accomplishments in this fiscal year. We served over 3,500 participants during the summer, utilizing not just our indoor spaces, but outdoor spaces too. We offered programming for teens, including girls programming, and our popular Super Teens program, which is a pre-employment program, which serves 300 youth between the ages of 12 to 14 years of age. Normally that's the age group that I always say that they're too cool for camps, but they're still too young for summer jobs. We're able to benefit from the caring and consistent mentorship of young people in the city of Boston. We are about to launch our new membership system that meets our data and operational needs and provides constituents and members with better service, integrates more seamlessly with other BCYF and City of Boston systems, and will be able to grow our change, will be able to help us grow and change as we do. During fiscal year 21, we worked with the vendor to build out that system, train our staff using it so they are ready when we're fully migrated it in May. Additional features will be rolled out during the fiscal year of 22. We expanded access to technology to enhance our programming during COVID restrictions, including supplying hotspots, laptops, and in partnership with Comcast, offering free Wi-Fi at all our centers. We completed a strategic planning process, securing input from the people, partners, and community members who know us best, and are now working on the implementation phase of working groups. In the implementation phase, our working groups are focusing on capital assets, human capital strategy, communications, outreach, and partnership services, and organizational structure processes as well. Now I will mention just a few of the new initiatives we have planned for fiscal year 22. We are removing the center membership fees. This is something that we piloted during COVID-19 and are going to continue. We are creating a new and diverse career pathways program for our SOAR participants, program formerly known as the Boston Street Programs, in order to provide better support and career opportunities that help participants in that program attain and sustain meaningful lifelong employment. We will continue with the implementation phase of the BCYF strategic plan. Develop anchor gendered specific programs addressing self-esteem, college prep, leadership, STEM, mental health at 7 BCYF centers to support the administration's effort to help close the gender gap. We are continuing the capital investments in BCYF facilities with renovations to the BCYF Curley, Mattahunt, Rosendale Community Centers, Parish Street Pool, along with the reallocation studies for new community centers in Alston Brighton, Charlestown, and Dorchester. Partnering with the Foundation for BCYF, we continue to identify and engage strategic partnerships and secure new large institutional sponsors and financial supporters to support the important work that we do. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak with you today. It's an honor to be working for a mayor and working with a city council that is committed to working with us to create centers that are centered on transformative relationships. And I look forward to discussing our proposed fiscal year 22 budget with you now.
Great, thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you also to my colleagues who joined right after I did the summary. So also joined by Councillor Anissa Isabi-George at large and Councillor Andrea Campbell, District 4. We'll jump straight into questions. Really appreciate the presentation. And I'll defer mine. So we'll go first to Councillor Michelle Wu.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you so much, Commissioner, and everyone here. Just curious to get your thoughts about this upcoming summer, especially with the mental health strain of so many students and young people facing isolation, and now all of a sudden a return to maybe a little bit more of being able to see people. How are you thinking about the, especially as the fiscal year is kind of spanning across or ending and the first half of the summer and then more, how are you thinking about resources needed for this summer and what programming might look like?
Okay, I think we want to hopefully look at being as normal as possible, right? We want to make sure people, especially young people, come back to something that's familiar and not something that's sort of over-programmed or over-protocol that at the same time it makes them feel confined. I think that our team has really been carefully looking at how do they develop strong, safe measures, but to ensure that we can deliver strong programming. I mean, one of the great things I think that's happened is that we had to reinvent ourselves as a department. And so we've always found creative new ways to try to continue to engage young people. Partnerships with Parks and Recs provided us access to public parks that allowed us to meet our young people where they were in a safe surrounding. But I think that we are ready and able to really begin to look at our programming, one that will feel as normal as possible, even though we're still living underneath a COVID reality. I know that our team continues to work looking at various regulations, because as you know, we have summer camp programs, we have EEC programs, and then we also have a municipal kind of exemption. And what we're trying to do with all three is to make sure that all three are able to operate within our spaces, but in a way that will be seamless, so that when our young people and our families return back, they can feel like, wow, this is a big step forward in getting us to feel comfortable and normal again. But I think that BCYF learned a lot last summer compared to many of our nonprofit partners who unfortunately did not maybe have the capacity to serve young people. We jumped forward and say, we need to offer something. And in that process, we learned what we can do, how we can do it, and do it well. I think that the goal for this summer is to continue to reconnect, re-engage. We're no longer in response, we're in recovery. And what we want to make sure that recovery is going to be a process and where we can serve more families, more youth, more frequently.
And I don't know if this is the right space or there's gonna be
Yeah.
later budget conversations about this, but in terms of the federal funding and sort of dream projects, particularly around infrastructure or one-time things, what's the sort of moonshot of what would be the ideal, if you all could have first pick of the pool of funding, for example, what would be ideal from your perspective?
I think that we want to basically look at re-engagement, you know what I mean? And engage our families and engage our youth again. At the same time, re-engage them with new tools of engagement, because, you know, one of the things that did happen is that even though we got the additional hotspots and we had great relationship with Comcast, there's still so much more that we can do with technology. And I think that, as we know, we're seeing a really move towards the engineering field for a lot of young people. You know, they are being very creative. They're being whizzes. I think ideally, you know, as we move forward, we want to see some initial more investments in regards to support that work. But at the same time, also looking at how we can also support some of our other partners in our neighborhoods too, as well, that have been, you know, deeply hurt or impacted by the pandemic. You know, as we all know, you know, you have Dorchester Youth Collaborative that's no longer here. Who knows how many other mom and pop organizations that did meaningful work might not be able to operate. So we're going to be looking at our backyards and looking at what happened, what is no longer there, and seeing how we can support in the best capacities we have with any kind of funding that we get, federal or whatever, to help support the recovery and the re-engagement efforts in our neighborhoods.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, not Madam Chair, that's me, Councillor Wu. All right, up next is Councillor Liz Braden, and we've also been joined by Councillor Julia Mejia at large. Councillor Braden.
Thank you for your presentation. And thank you for all the great work you did during the pandemic. As you say, we're in recovery mode now. I know we've had conversations before. I really want to drill down a little on we are closing our community centre in Alston Brighton next July. I wonder, in terms of covering all the services that are provided there, how are we going to do that? Like and this is getting into the weeds a little, and I know we can have an offline conversation, but I really want to flag it up that this is a hugely big concern in the neighbourhood, because the BCYF centre in Alston Brighton was the only one we have at the Jackson Man. It's the only centre. It is a polling place for 5 precincts. So in a big election, there's hundreds of people queued down the street. So we're going to have to think about elections. We're going to think about cooling centres. We're going to think about all the different pieces of service that facility allows us to provide to our community. So I really want to know, what's the plan? I don't want us to leave it to July next year to figure out, scratch our head and say, oh, now what are we going to do? I want us to have a plan like early next year, that we know that we have a path, and that we know where all these different services are going to be provided, even if they have to be splintered up across the neighbourhood. And I also would love a timeline for when we can foreseeably see a replacement community centre constructed. Like, that's a huge site there. There's 2 schools and a community centre. It seems like it's a really central location with really good bus service. It seems like an obvious place to rebuild, but you know, the neighbourhood is pushing me on what's happening, when's it going to happen, what are we going to do about this, and the timeline is sort of a critical piece. And then the other issue that's come up in relating to basically, we need to have some sort of sustainable support for youth services for our young people who live at Commonwealth Housing on Fidelis Way, and also at Faneuil Gardens. Some of our legislative delegates to the state, Senator Brownsberger appropriated funds to help with youth workers, but we can get money, but throwing money at the problem isn't the issue. We need some agency in the city to take responsibility for providing or supervising youth workers, or even having a resident services provide. And this is sort of a dovetailing into BHA, but a resident services coordinator who can actually coordinate a youth worker or some youth services going in. We have about 400 to 500 kids in those two areas in Fidelis and Faneuil. The COVID pandemic has been horrendously stressful for them, and kids are getting into serious trouble. And for a place that we didn't see too much trouble, we're sliding. And I'm really concerned that if we don't step up and put serious consideration into providing youth services, that those kids are going to get into more trouble, and that just the quality of life for everybody concerned is going to go downhill. So, those are the two big issues. What are we going to do with the centre? And then this issue around our youth services for these two, for Fidelis and Faneuil, are a huge concern for our neighbours, and especially for the residents of those of Fidelis and Faneuil. Thank you.
Sounds great. I'll try to tackle both of them as best as I can. I think we've had conversations on both, and I think they are definitely on our radar. Of course, Jackson Man has been a big one that we have been always putting before the mayor's office as a priority for the department. And you are correct. Compared to many of the communities that we serve, we have at minimum 2 community centers, in some other parts of the city. When you look at Jamaica Plain and you look at East Boston, those are examples of when you're looking at similar size communities. There are 2. I think that what we've been doing is that, during the period of COVID and the period, of course, the transitions of mayors and so forth, we kept this issue up in the air. Just recently, I had met with Chief Irish to talk about this particular issue. As you're very much aware, this year's fiscal budget, there is a feasibility study that has been approved through the, hopefully we'll get approved through this budget process. And that will begin to look at what spaces or lots might be available for a sort of standalone facility in the Austin Brighton neighborhood. But at the same time, one of the things that we did have a conversation about is to look at what is the available swing space that might be there temporary, because we just know that the feasibility study only tells us where we may plant a community center. But it will then take another process to actually put in the budget dollars that will be needed to actually build a facility. And that within itself is going to take its time and its processes to do that. And I think that right now, especially speaking with our administrative coordinators, our leadership at the center, I think that the key thing that we want to do is that we want to just make sure that we have a sustainable presence during the meantime, after July 22nd, that would allow us to continue to run the most crucial programs that community depends on that community center to provide. And I think when you're looking at adult ESL classes being one of the key programs, when you're looking at the EEC after school programs, those are things that I think we're going to have to pull in other departments in, maybe Boston Public Schools, of course, PFD, any viable property that the city might own, to think about how we might be able to plant some of those programs. Normally, when we've done some construction projects like the Curly and Rosendale and et cetera, some of that program shifts to other locations. Not 100% of our programs come over, but we make sure that the key crucial programs actually do. I think that in the weeks to come, we'll definitely formulate that. This is definitely a priority. I know that in speaking to Chief Irish and new director, Kerry Griffith, they're going to hopefully make sure that this thing gets pushed along as fast as possible in regards to the feasibility study. And hopefully we'll begin to formulate a plan and hopefully keep your office in the loop, Council Breeden, because you have been a strong advocate, and BCYF has appreciated your support around this matter. And I think that hopefully we'll get to a better place, that by hopefully July 22nd, we'll have a good idea of where our programs might be able to exist on the temporary basis while we're working on a long-term sustainable plan for that community in Austin Brighton. I think the second part of it, I know we've had internal conversations looking at Faneuil, looking at Fidelis Way. We know that there's been transition there too as well. Commonwealth is no longer there. Now BHA is actually operating it. And to really begin to look at what other partners are also offering, looking at what the West End and the Boys End the West End and the YMCA is doing. It might be that we might have to take a sort of maybe targeted outreach approach to it. But at the same time, to also look at who might be looking at being the lead agency that can provide that support. Because the one thing is that you're right, you could plop in a youth worker in there, but if they have no support, and additional tools, then it makes their job a little harder. And if you know young people are always looking and asking for things. And if you don't deliver, you lose your credibility with them. And so one of the things that I think we'll look at, especially in the weeks to come, is to look at how we maybe look at dealing with the issue now for this summer temporary, but then to look at what's the long-term plan moving forward. And we've had some collaborative partnerships with the BHA, especially in the Bromley Heath area. That tends to be one of the housing developments that's mostly impacted by violence. And we've worked with Children's Hospital, and they've provided through the foundation some funding that allow us to put some youth workers there. But it's managed with the Tree of Life, which is a neighborhood organization that works in the development that provides the youth workers with the supervision, but also the additional support. And I don't know if that model might be a model that works, but we want to make sure that whatever model we create, that it's created in partnership with the residents there, with the parents there. Nothing is more hurtful when somebody parachutes in without talking to the people who are in. It's better to build a strong youth model from the inside out, not from the outside in.
Yeah, I agree. And we have been in long conversations, I'd say for the last 6 months or so, we've been talking to the residents in both those facilities to try and identify, but there is a huge level of concern. I appreciate your attention to this.
Yep.
And, I'm not going to go away. I'm going to keep pushing you on this. Count on it.
Liz, if you know Barbara Pecci, who lives in the neighborhood, who happens to be my regional operation manager, she does not let this thing go away. So I got to God bless her for always making sure that she's a strong advocate for her own home neighborhood, but especially because she knows the families who live there.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sure my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braden. No, I think we all know how pressing figuring something out for the Jackson man is.
Yeah.
Also, sorry, I'm shrouded in darkness today, so people are going to have to still see my gavel despite the lack of color contrast. All right, and we were joined, sorry, I neglected earlier to say as well, by Councillor Frank Baker. And next up now is Councillor O'Malley, and then it'll be Anissa Sabi-George. Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to see everybody. Commissioner Morales, thank you for great leadership in an unimaginably challenging year. As I have said publicly and privately, and we'll repeat, one thing that really impressed me were how nimble so many of my fellow public servants were, folks at all aspects of city government, and none more than members of BCYF. Just the fact that so many sites were immediately transformed into food pickup sites, as you had noticed in your opening remarks. It was really well done, and kudos to you and your team again for being so adaptable to the challenges that a year and a half ago would seem completely outside the realm of possibility. Obviously, it goes without saying my deep love and appreciation for all the BCYF facilities and staff in my district, of which there are many. And I have some district-specific questions, but first I just want to go over, and this may be for Varney or Pat to jump in as well. I'm delighted to see that utilities are the driving cost of decrease. Line item 52200 is showing a 26% decrease in utility costs, which it turns out to just about $375,000. Why is that? It's good news is the punchline, but why are we seeing such a dramatic decrease in utility costs?
Well, Pat might be able to add more, but we have been one of the departments that have been really strong in participating in some energy saving initiatives. We have a few buildings that have solar panels that are laid out. So we're seeing energy savings in that aspect. And Pat's team continues to work with a lot of our facility staff to look at what other cost measures we can do to make sure that our buildings are running efficient, having what they need, but at the same time, making sure that we're controlling the cost as much as possible. We know that we can't be a strong advocate for the environment if we ourselves are not practicing that within our own halls. So, and Pat can share a little bit more too if he wants. Pat.
Yes, yep. Hi, Hi, thanks, Commissioner. And Councilor O'Malley, thank you very much. Yeah, we've been working with the city's environmental department as part of the Renew Boston Trust, which started off as a $10 million initiative from Mayor Walsh. I believe now it's up to $30 million. And we got in on the phase one, which of course, over here at the Tobin building where our main offices are in Mission Hill, we had 2.1 million put into it with a new HVAC and ventilation system. Timing's everything in life, of course. And given what's happened in the last, 15 months, 16 months. But we also put solar panels, as Will mentioned, on both sides of the gym. In Rosendale Community Center, we also put them on the rooftop over at Rosendale. We're hoping to put solar panels on more buildings. We've also done LED energy efficiency retrofits here at the Tobin, at the Shelburne, at Curtis Hall, at the Flaherty Pool. And we're looking to do more of those in Hyde Park Community Center also. So we're in phase two now with working with Adam Mullen, who's at the PFD Capital Project Manager with PFD, with Honeywell and City Hall Environmental, and with Chris Kramer, the Director of Energy. And they're always checking stuff. I mean, they come out, look at the transformers, they come out, look at the numbers. So this is a very big project, and it doesn't end when you finish the actual construction. So, I mean, for instance, I know that Pat Lee, who works with Adam at PFD Capital, and Honeywell.
Pat, I'm sorry, I'm just going to cut you off just because I only have a couple.
I know about energy efficiency. Sorry, Council.
No. I could listen to this all day long, and I appreciate this. And obviously, it underscores the point about the savings that any municipality can see. So there is a plan to see increased PV panels on more. The bottom line is, I know the answer is yes, and we're going to have to talk about retrofitting these buildings. But can you share publicly with sort of what the next staggered buildings will be that will see PV panels? I know Curtis Hall in my district was in the mix. I'd argue Roach Center would be another ideal candidate.
Yeah, I think what it is, Councilor, the short answer is that we are definitely looking at all the buildings. It's about viability, and it's about energy efficiency and savings also. Sure. So I think at some point all of them are going to get it. I think it's just I'm not sure what the order is right now.
Okay, I mean, again, just more curious than anything else, because that's good news indeed. Other sort of specific line items, it's essentially level funded, but to offset the $375,000 in utility savings is a $400,000 increase in I think it's contracted services staffing, 52,900. Briefly, can someone just explain what that is?
What the increase in what line item?
It's 52,900.
Vonnie, where's Vonnie? She might be able to shine a little bit more light into it. If it's contractual.
That's the contractual, sir. Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Yeah, that's the 529 line. The contracted services line, and the increase in spending is basically due to we've taken the funds from the sites, and then we're spending more money in fixing things at the sites and things that the councils used to take care of before that we are doing. We are reimbursing them for expenses and that of their copiers and other stuff, but those go to copier accounts. But the 529 line, the contracted services, is basically to retrofit some of our sites because of the COVID. We had to hire contractors to build separation walls for the glass partitions that we have at the sites, and increase other expenses that we had to do in order to work and to make our sites safe for the public, even for the food distribution.
So that's 413. And again, seems like a more than worthwhile expenditure, but $413,000 was funding for infrastructure and buildings to make it COVID safe.
COVID, yes, most of that was part of that. Yeah.
Fair enough. And then I'm going to get right to some district specifics, because I know my colleagues have been waiting patiently. Excited to see, and I will add my voice to support Councilor Braden and Alston Brighton and the residents there as it relates to Jackson Man. But from my district, I'm delighted to see a lot of expenditures in the capital plan going forward. There doesn't seem to be any in District 6. And what I'm looking for isn't, I'm a realist and I recognize financial constraints. I don't need to say that we need to see a multi-million-dollar commitment right now. What I do need to see is us being in the queue in line, specifically for two. One is the Hennigan Community Center in the back of the hill, which is beyond dilapidated at this point. People still use it, but it needs so much work. And then the second is getting at least a commitment for a standalone senior center in West Roxbury. 25% of West Roxbury residents are senior citizens. We have the highest percentage in the city by far. And while I recognize great work that's happening at the Orenberger in terms of some specific programming, as well as at the Roach Center, there really needs to be a standalone facility. We've had sort of false starts and fits before going forward, but I guess my closing statement / question is I really want to see a commitment going forward that BCYF is going to invest in the Hennigan first and foremost for JP because it needs it, but secondly, having a standalone senior center. Again, just I want to know that the planning is there, the conversation is there, and we can really push forward. And my successor will hopefully be able to push forward going forward. So I don't know if you had any comments on that, Will, or happy to end it at that.
Well, we can note the senior center. That's one thing, and then look at it moving forward. And I think that when it comes to the Hennigan, I think that's a collaboration that we have to do with the BPS. As you know, we share the building with BPS. It's BPS's capital budget that normally takes care of their buildings. And I think we were doing some pretty good work pre-COVID, that we were having some standing meetings, observation meetings, walking through the spaces together. Man, I think that under Superintendent Casales' initiatives, I mean, she's looking at all her sites being sort of warm and welcoming spaces. I think that Pat will probably continue to work with the facilities department to tackle some of the issues there and continue to hopefully make it a prominent space, because we definitely know that it gets the heavy use, not only by constituents in Jamaica Plain, but also by the kids who live right down the street in the Mildred Haley housing development as well.
No, well said. Sounds like we're on the same page there. I look forward to the conversation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Matt.
Great. Thanks so much, Council President. Next up is Councillor Asabi George, and then it will be Councillor Campbell, Councillor Mejia, Councillor Baker. Councillor Asabi George.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Will, and your team for being with us today. My questions today are on three topics or three areas of your work: SOAR, summer violence prevention, and then also the impact report. On that, one of the FY21 accomplishments listed was having that completed first BCYF impact report. Can we talk a little bit more about what that report shed light on and what were some of the findings? And are we going to do that again? Are we looking forward to continuing that work, or at least responding to some of the impact report's findings? And then obviously on SOAR, looking for some of the results of the FY21 budget commitment of $100,000 around violence prevention, and the pilot program around pre-employment and job readiness training. And then obviously, as we prepare for the summer, these things are all, I think, interrelated. As we prepare for the summer, what's the work being done around violence prevention and reduction as it relates to your work and BCYF's efforts?
Okay, good. The impact report, I can get you a copy of so that you can have, but I think what it did, it just really shined more of the work that the foundation helped fund and support in regards to BCYF. So it looked at a lot of our super teens initiative, understanding that population is sort of a very underserved population, but it's also the population that is trying to figure out who they are and and what they want to be. So I know that I can definitely hopefully get you a report that will illustrate that. And it talks about some of the strategic investments that the foundation is making towards BCYF. We would never have been able to have a strategic planning process if we didn't have a funding source. And the foundation provided that funding source and made it very possible for us to have broader conversations with multiple stakeholders in all our communities to kind of do that work and get it out. It talked a little bit about our adult education programs, our girls initiatives, what we're doing with seniors. It talks a little bit about our percentage rates in regards to those participation levels that the foundation, for the initiatives that the foundation helped fund. So Council, I will definitely get you a copy and you will have it. And if you have any other follow-up conversations in regards to it, it would be kind of great. But it talks a little bit, a lot of the central initiative programs that get funded through the foundation aspect of it. You
Perfect.
mentioned the 100,000 in regards to the SOAR program and our violence. We've recently had our annual sort of summer violence prevention kind of meeting, one that's actually coordinated through Chief Martinez's office in partnership with the Office of Public Safety under Dr. Falk. And one of the things we do is that we look at making sure that we take a very collaborative approach when it comes to summer and violence. As you were very much aware last year, even though we were in the middle of a pandemic, violence doesn't stop for a pandemic. And a lot of our SOAR and street workers continue to do that vital work. They continue to engage young people, even though they knew that they themselves might have put themselves in a very compromising situation where they could be exposed with COVID. I think that this year's initiative is looking at deepening more of our partnerships, looking at how we could be more creative with our sites, looking at the hours of operation of our sites, to continue to hopefully do what we can to hopefully curb violence in our communities. But we hope that with the relifting of the restrictions, right, we also will see some of our partners opening up their doors and helping support some of those violence prevention efforts as well. I think that what we saw last year is that our partners did not have the capacity to open their doors, but we think that this year with their doors opening and with a little bit more support, we'll be able to hopefully do that. And as you're very much aware, you know, the BCYF provides a summer fund grants. One of the things that we did focus it on was looking at violence prevention, but also looking at it from a mental health standpoint, understanding that COVID fatigue was a real reality for a lot of our young people. Councilor Breeden mentioned what that isolation has impacted our young people. And so we want to make sure that organizations that are going to be working with young people are looking at these issues carefully and to make sure that their programs are designed to respond to any issue of violence that may happen in their community, not from a intervention standpoint, but a really strong prevention standpoint. Did you have another question?
No, thank you very much
All
for
right.
that. No, so the SOAR and the summer violence certainly go together, and that work is definitely like tied to each other. I guess my one sort of a quick question, there is a new data system that's being implemented to meet some of the operational needs and data needs. Could you just clarify some of the goals of that data system? To what extent is the data collecting being used in other BCYF systems or communication purposes? Could you talk just briefly about that?
Yeah, sure. I think that what we had a very dated system that probably went back, who knows, 18 years ago, when all we were looking was just counting numbers. Now we want to hopefully look at how do we count impact, right? And it provides us an opportunity to further engage and stay engaged with our constituents and see how even our constituents are moving through our various facilities. The new data system will hopefully help us track our young people. I mean, I envision that if a young kid came to us, even one of your own children at the age of 12 came to us as a super teen, we can see them graduate to the DYE program, graduate into maybe a small summer seasonal employment program, and we'll be able to track how a healthy continuum, how they move through our spaces and through a healthy continuum. I think that that's the thing that we didn't have before. One of the things is that BCYF is really known as one of the strongest organizations that partners with a lot of nonprofits. But what happens is that we're also the best kept secret, and we don't want to be a secret anymore. And we know that the data will help paint the picture, provide the sketch, and show individuals about the impact of our work.
Great, and I see the gavel. I appreciate the commentary on both of those things. And if I could just say out loud, and it's not a question, just a comment. I know that we're on the same page with this. Let's just teach more kids to swim so that they can be lifeguards, summer jobs, which I know are sometimes hard to find lifeguards that are trained, but also it's a great life skill for our kids. I thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, and your team.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Sabi George. Next up is Councillor Campbell, and then Councillor Mejia, Councillor Baker. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, you and your team for the work you continue to do, particularly in COVID. Has not been easy, of course, for anyone. And you guys had to transition to some online services and all kinds of creative ways. So thank you and your team, and of course, your entire staff of folks who clearly aren't on this Zoom for their service as well. Just a couple of questions. One is, obviously have been in conversation with Mike Kozu and the Grove Hall community since the very beginning. And when the Grove Hall Community Center was turned into predominantly for senior programming, which of course the feedback has been great, a lot of youth then didn't really have places to go, or there was a push from the community to expand services and programming for youth. And so obviously now there was an update from the Public Facilities Department regarding a potential new site in Dorchester. I know there's going to be a community process, I think, over the next few months. So what's the timeline for that community engagement process? What communities in addition to Grove Hall will be included and engaged? Can you tell us a little bit more with respect to details on that?
I can probably give you a quick overview. I know that one of the things is that Dorchester happens to be one of the communities and where all our community centers are shared spaces with BPS. We don't have a dedicated standalone facility in Dorchester. And Dorchester being the largest community of Boston, to not have a standalone is just, it's something that has been long overdue and definitely
That's right.
needed. And I think that you'll find that there'll be strong advocates from different points of Dorchester, Fields Corner, Uppers Corner, Grove Hall, and etc. I think that one of the things that I think what would be happening under the leadership of Chief Irish is really making sure that study continues its process. I think that we had began the process, but then we hit this pandemic, and then the gears slowed down just a bit. But I feel that once it gets the momentum going, there has to be a community process in regards to what that Dorchester location is actually going to be and where it's going to be mounted. And I think that one of the things that when you look at even the Burke High School, it's so heavily populated with many partners and many programs, that I think that there's also an opportunity there to kind of look at how the high school itself lends itself to some of the needs in the community too as well. But I think that the process with the feasibility study for the Dorchester site is going to be a much broader one, just because of the fact that Dorchester is so big, and would need the additional attention and the right amount of advocacy that needs to happen from the various communities that are all looking for that Dorchester site to open. And Mike was right, and one of the good things that it's still there in our budget, so it means it's still going to be hopefully be rolled out, and hopefully. That initiative will take some steam now under Chief Irish direction.
I will say, I'm all for even creating more than one site in Dorchester, just given how large the neighborhood is. Frankly, I have Lower Mills going all the way through Grove Hall.
Yep.
And so consider me an advocate for more than one site, because I'm sure as we go through this process, we're going to see that we're going to need that.
Yeah.
The Burke is doing some incredible work for sure, but the challenge with the Burke over the years, and this is even when Dr. Mack was there, she didn't even have control of her own building, like when she could open it. That was an ongoing conversation with BPS on just, school leaders having control and authority to open their building for community purposes. So youth are not, if you were not a student, for example, at the Burke, very difficult to get into the Burke for programming. And we do know there's a large population of folks in the Grove Hall area, just given not just the school age young people, but also young people in general who are non-school age, or frankly, not enrolled in school. So really want to think creatively. I also know this includes parks. So is BCYF talking with parks? Is parks talking to BCYF?
Yeah.
And if not, okay, because that also is a part of the conversation with the lots that are vacant and trying to be activated right now, as maybe a possibility of doing both green space and youth center or something more creative based on what the community is pushing for.
Yeah. Yeah, we like I said, we always in conversation with parks, because we do a lot of programming together, BNBL being a big example during the summer, and then we look at some winter programming that they have staff for, and et cetera. And I know that lot, that what they're talking about, I think there was a community process that went through that too as well, where the community also wanted a park there. So it's one of those things that I think that needs more facilitation on, more conversations on it too as well. You'll find, Councilor Campbell, that our seniors want parking. one of the things about that strip down that.
Yes, God bless our seniors in the cars.
And the seniors in the cars. So, our seniors want a piece of it too with the parking.
Yep. And so they're working on that. I will say, we understand that's sort of a heat island area. So there is real conversation around how we protect against, environmental issues, but also at the same time, create this space for youth. And I think there's a way to do it. So we'll convene a conversation. We've been going back and forth with all stakeholders, and we'll follow up. My last question before I see the gavel is on just participatory budgeting, particularly young people, and what, just sharing a little bit more, where are we with expanding that? What information do the young residents who participate in that process throughout the fiscal year, what information do they receive regarding the chosen investments, what that process looks like, and just any app, what's it look like in terms of expanding it? Because obviously we get great feedback with respect to participatory budgeting and doing more.
Councilor Campbell, that actually lives under the Department of Youth Employment and Engagement. That's actually Director Rashad.
Oh, the one we just rescheduled.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll follow up there.
You can follow up with at his hearing in regards to that question.
Will do. And
I'll let him know it's coming though.
Yes, I know we rescheduled it and looking forward to it. But I will push the Grove Hall again. I mean, I think part of the frustration with community is just how long it takes, right? To get things done and to build something and to respond to a need that the community has lifted up. I mean, it took years just to transfer the vacant city-owned parcel from D&D to Parks, right? And which is ridiculous. I think we all agreed. And so looking forward to convening that meeting to see how we can move along on this project, in particular in Grove Hall, while of course expanding BCYF sites throughout Dorchester, and how we can use maybe some of the federal dollars, right, to help in some innovative and imaginative ways to help the department and your department do just that. So thank you guys and your team. I think there's a gavel waving. I'll be respectful to my other council colleagues. Thank you again to you and your team, and look forward to circling back real soon.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Great. Thanks so much, Councillor Campbell. Next up, Councillor Mejia, and then Councillor Baker. Councillor Mejia.
Yes. Good morning, all. So I just kind of want to piggyback a little bit on some of the questions that Councillor Campbell had, specifically in regards to Grove Hall. I grew up in the Dorchester area, and I do believe that we have an opportunity to serve the residents of Grove Hall. So I'm really advocating I know I'm not the district councilor, but I am a District 4 resident. And I am advocating and supporting a Grove Hall site. I think that the residents have been on this for a long time, and I definitely do believe that there's an opportunity there to honor their request. So with that, I just have a few questions. I'm curious about, it's great to see programming created specifically for young girls. I'm curious to see how we can build off of that to include programming specifically for other young people, such as LGBTQ plus youth. What programming exists, if any, you're thinking of. The other question is, the document also says that we will work with the City of Boston's Language Access Coordinator to expand translation and interpretation within BCYF, but I'm curious, what will that process look like, and what options do people who speak languages other than English currently have access to BCYF services? And will we still include so sorry about that. Can you also provide a brief update regarding the Madison Park BCYF location renovations? How have we been adding capacity to other nearby locations to help sustain the need in the community? And lastly, what is the plan to continue to offer technology services throughout COVID, hotspots, Wi-Fi, etc.? And thank you so much for all your hard work.
All right. In regards to Madison, there is no renovation happening in Madison that I'm aware of. It's there. In regards to expanding technology, I think that you're going to see that if the federal dollars come down, that's what we're going to look at, trying to make sure that we can really better outfit our sites with the technology needs that they may need, so that this way, if anything comes down in the future, we'll be more than ready and more able to continue to serve those young people. And what was one of the, you gave me a good ramble of questions. I'm just trying to hopefully see which one was the other one that you mentioned. I got the technology, I got the Madison.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm curious about programming for LGBTQ youth. And
LGBTQ.
then, yeah, and then I'm also curious about the language access.
Okay, and in regards to language access, I think that we continue to work with the city's language access coordinator to make sure that everything that we have is reflected to the communities that we serve. But I think that one of the things that the city also learned about BCYF is that we have also a robust team of individuals here who also have that language capacity. And it's also thinking about how do we pull our own teams together to help us support in communicating to those constituents. And BCYF being one of the most diverse departments in the city of Boston, we're going to continue to hopefully take the strengths of our staff to continue to hopefully work with the language access coordinators on making sure that whatever we produce, whatever we generate, we're able to serve. And as you know, we have everything from ESL programs that operate in our facilities to also adult high-set programs. And each of those are always met with individuals who might have some language barriers, but we always provide some language access opportunities for them. And in regards to LGBTQ, let me get back to you on that, because the reality is, we have communities and we do have young people and we do have groups that self-identify in that capacity. But in our facilities, no one's ever turned away, regardless of whatever their sexual orientation or how they identify as. Everyone's sort of always welcome. You're a member of our facilities. And so our sites are always inclusive of all. But I'll get back to you more in regards to see what sites might be doing something specifically in regards to that. But I don't like, clustering kids together because they're in a particular group. I say we need to be a very inclusive organization, and where we're teaching young people how they understand the differences of others, because in learning the differences of others, they become better individuals.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Having worked with young people my entire career, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I guess the question was really, since you're creating youth programming for girls, just was curious if you were thinking about other groups as well. But just for a point of clarification, on the website, it says that the Madison Park site is closed for renovation. So that's probably where, in prepping for this hearing, we got our research from the website. That it says that it's closed for renovations at this point. So we just wanted to get an update on that. And then one last thing that I'd just like to talk a little bit about is, do you guys have, I know this is not about employment, you guys are specifically just the sites, but I'm curious what opportunities exist, if any, to partner up with Madison Park around whether it be working with young people to design. I know I participated in some of your programming last summer where the young people were creating and designing their own sites. Will we be seeing more of that, creating opportunities maybe to even partner up with Madison Park? I know they have a culinary art program where they might even be great to use as a vendor to make cookies for the sites. Like, what opportunities are you looking to tap into to help support Madison Park?
That sounds good. I think I will note it. I will work with our programs team to see what collaborations we may be able to form with. And you're talking about their sort of not the culinary arts, but the whole side of Madison Park that's more doing sort of the trades and the culinary arts and that aspect of it, right? Okay.
Yeah,
Madison Park is also the high school part too as well.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the voc tech, like where they have students who are learning how to cook and bake, and they also have cosmetology, they have a media art. So I just think that the more that we can collaborate with Madison Park and tap into all of the great work that they're doing there to help support, even if they can do a commercial for you all, I think that there's ways for the city to be more interconnected with all of the rich resources that we have. So it's just something that I just want to just plant that seed so that maybe you all can figure out how to make some of those things happen.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that we have students from the school that are attending our sites for other supplemental programming, and where we can think about that. I know that we post-COVID, we were also working with we were looking to start working with Boston Arts Academy, because we know that young people want to show off their work, and we have beautiful lobbies that sometimes could be decorated by some of the artwork or performances, or even the spoken words of some of the students in that school. But it's one of those things that hopefully we're going to rehatch. I think that under Superintendent Caselius, she sees a lot of the low-hanging fruit at some of the BCYF centers, especially some of the share spaces, on how we may be able to even deepen our commitment to young people together. Because if they're feeling it at school and they're feeling it in our BCYF centers, then our kids are definitely going to be feeling great about themselves and what their outlook for their future is going to be.
Thank you, Will. And then one last question. Are you guys thinking or are there any programs that are intergenerational since, it's youth and families? Do you offer any intergenerational programming?
Yeah, I think something like Family Gym is intergenerational. We also have worked with the Boston Arts Commission, and where we had resident artists that come in and always challenge them to make sure that whatever they're working on, one example came Vine Street, that there was a sort of a program there that was designed around hand sculpture, and it kind of gave an opportunity for young people and some of the active older adults. I don't really call them seniors, right? The active older adults, to have a dialogue around where their hands have been, throughout their history. And so we always are encouraging opportunities that are multi-generational. And I think you're going to find that more, because one of the goals that we're looking at is really looking at how we expand more senior programming. But at the same time, one of the great things about our seniors is that some of them are former retired school teachers, some of them are former business leaders, some of them are former entrepreneurs. Sometimes the skill sets that they've acquired over their lifetime are the things that our young people need to listen and touch and have access to. Because sometimes when they think about an entrepreneur, they think about somebody big, a Jeff Bezos. But the reality is the guy that runs the barbershop down the street is a much viable option for them to connect and learn from.
Thank you so much. I see the gavel, and I'm really encouraged by all your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for me.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Next up is Councilor Baker, and we've also been joined by Councilor Ed Flynn, who will be after Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm kind of multitasking here. I'm doing the best I can. Will, how are you today? Thank you for the work you do in Boston Centers for Youth and Family. Will, I just want to get a sense of what the reopening will look like for the centers, and specifically, I think about the Murphy, the Leahy Holler in there, so pools. I know your focus will probably be on the outside pools, but do we have a plan in place for those centers that have indoor pools? Will we be able to open those this summer? Or if you can talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Right now we are working through some contingency plans in regards to our summer pools. I think that we're just like other partners that have pools, the YMCA's, the Boys and Girls Clubs, and even private facilities. I think that one thing that we're struggling with is that when the pandemic hit, the American Red Cross, who certifies individuals for lifeguard, right, changed their format. And because they couldn't do the hands-on touching stuff, some guards have chosen not to recertify. So it's taking us a process of trying to hopefully bring people along. We have developed a lifeguard institute, so hopefully we can get individuals in the door and be able to hopefully get them recertified in time so that we'll be able to open our pools. We're working, and Pat may be able to share a little shine more light, but we're also working with Boston Public Schools, because majority of the pools that you're talking about indoor are actually facilities that are majority owned by the Boston Public Schools. We actually just manage the maintenance of the pool, the chemicals, make sure the pumps are working. But the reality is that there's a crack on the floor. It's something that they pick up and hopefully take care of. And we've been also working with ISD because there are also some state regulations that are have to be met to make sure that our pools end up being operable. And of course, our concentration is going to be right now at the outdoor pools, because after they sat dormant all winter long, you never realize what's wrong with them until you start trying to get them to be reopened. And sometimes we have to actually deal with the systems in that regards. But we hopefully hope that as the restrictions continue to be lessened, we might be able to hopefully expand more of our aquatics program. But it's also going to be very contingent upon how many number of lifeguards we're going to be able to recruit to hopefully meet the safety needs of each of our pools, because it isn't something as simple as giving a 15-year-old the responsibility to sit on a pool deck. There has to be supervision There has to be a level of experience in doing that. And so we're hopefully working through that. Right now we've been also working with the city's COVID response team to make sure that our protocols and procedures that we have in place in regards to our pool meet the standards, and to make sure that individuals who are coming into our facilities and exiting our facilities and working in and around our staff and our lifeguards are all safe, because we want to make sure that the environment is safe. God forbid we wouldn't want anything to happen. But you can expect that as we continue to build that contingency, we're going to make sure that we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that those pools are operable in time, especially during the summer months that we need it the most.
Excellent. So, like when we're talking about the shortage of lifeguards, what is it we're talking about, Will? Like, do you have a number? And if you don't, that's fine. We can always just do a follow-up. Do you have a number of like what we would need, and then where we are? So like a number of a potential, how many people we would need to fill these spots?
Yeah. I mean, we would love to always have more, right? Because, one of the things that happens is that it's our seasonal rush, okay? And the reason we always hire more is because we always know that we have students who will say they're going to stay with us for 10 weeks, but we only get 6 weeks worth of work.
Yeah.
They end up going back to college. And that's the reality that we deal with. I don't know what the number is, because we also have a couple of facilities that we know are going to be offline this summer. Some of them are dealing with major issues of leaks underneath electrical systems. We have, of course, we're not going to have the Curly beachfront available because we're still under construction. But I know that our team is doing its due diligence. I can get back to you what the ideal number will be. One of the things that I will ask all the counselors, if you know individuals who are former lifeguards or whatever, please send them our way. We're willing to train and get them recertified. I think we're asking everybody. We're making a big push within the colleges. We found that there are college students who thought that there weren't any lifeguard opportunities because they assumed, based on last summers and seeing pools shut down, that they might not be open this summer. We're telling them we're open for business. So anything that can help get the word out will be great too as well.
Thanks, Will. I see my buddy Pat over there. Hi, Pat. How are you?
Well, good, counsel. Thank you very much.
Good. And just to kind of make a comment, I would know the answer that with a lot of these centers not getting a whole lot of use, are we in better shape, worse shape? Were we able to maybe go after some deferred maintenance there during this COVID time? Like, were we able to use the empty centers to be able to get some work done over this past year, Pat?
You know what? We did work with BPS facilities to do some work in the centers. For instance, in Council Flynn's area, the Quincy Auditorium is going to have some work done coming up now. Most of it was preventive maintenance. We did have some problems also. We had roof leaks that caused some gym problems at the Condon, for instance, the floor buckled, so that had to be fixed. So I would say it's nicer, but it wasn't because of deferred maintenance. It was because of emergency work because of the roof leak. But yeah, and also in our standalones, we definitely did work during the pandemic also. And again, there was that period of time last spring where nobody could do any work. But once the construction got back into play, we definitely used contractors throughout the fall and winter and into the spring now to do some work. BPS did also.
Thanks, Pat. I just wanted to hear your voice. You're still working with my man, Michael Terry?
Michael's no longer with us. He's moved on to brighter pastures. But he's doing all right. But we got a good staff here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there such a thing? All right. Councillor Flynn is up next, and then it'll be my questions. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Councillor Bork. Thank you, Commissioner Morales. It's good to see you, Commissioner Morales, and it's good to see Pat as well. We played in the BNBL basketball league together down at the Condon and the Tynan, and I can say Pat was a better basketball player than I was. So it's good to be with you both. Let me start off, Commissioner, and I know Pat mentioned it, the $250,000 funding for the BCYF Josiah Quincy School is for the auditorium seating. And I'm just looking at my notes, to be scheduled. But tell me what we're doing with the seating at the BCYF at Josiah Quincy.
Pat, you want to take that one?
Yep, I got it. Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, Council Flynn. Actually, we have news even in the last 24 hours. So what happened was the bid process was completed and the school department came back. The low bid was $304,000 on a $250,000 budget. We also put in an addendum for $36,000 for brand new lighting and on the stage and make it nicer. And the Office of Budget Management graciously yesterday, after was it yesterday morning or Tuesday afternoon, approved the entire $340,000. So we're adding $90,000 to the budget. The project's going to go forward. I'm not sure on timelines yet, but we just got the money secured for the low bid contractor. So it is good news. The $250,000 budget, I believe, is now $346,000 as of yesterday, about 48 hours ago.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you to the BCYF team. That's important to know, especially as we know during the last year, it's been a devastating year for the Asian community. That auditorium and that school is used by many Asian students. So I know that will be very helpful. Hey, Pat, I know there was an issue in the past on that auditorium, but more so on the what do they call it? The stage. But will the stage now be ADA compliant?
Yes, it should be. Yeah, in order to do a contract project like that, which after 149 bid process, legally you have to make it ADA compliant.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's important. Thank you, Pat. Just going over my notes here. I know you talked about deferred maintenance. There was some issues at the Blackstone, BCYF Blackstone, on maintenance issues. What do we know? Can I, if we don't know what they are, can I get a list of them? And I don't know if there's also plans to do any upgrades to the Blackstone, but that facility plays a critical role in the South End. It's used by Latinx kids. It's used by African-American kids. The Cathedral, Villa Victoria. You don't get a more diverse group than the Blackstone youth. What are we doing with the Blackstone to help make services better for the kids?
Yep, and the Blackstone is actually we're a BCYF Community Center, the Blackstone Community Center within a larger complex. We're in Building C, which is the Boston Public Schools own the facility. So BPS Facilities Management would do capital project planning. We do work with them on that. We work with them in the past on the gym floor and on doing things in the building itself. But in terms of preventive maintenance stuff, that would be on their end of it, BPS Facilities Management. However, we can get if we have a list together, we'll get a list together from the community center side. But usually anything we have in Building C, I can say that BPS Facilities Management, we have a great relationship with them. And I mean, I have all their cell numbers. They all have my cell number. We talk, weekends, nights, so it's not like we can't talk 24/7. And we work together. I mean, we just got something this morning about an AED, so they're already working on it. An AED beeping sounds like a little thing, but when you hear a beeping noise all morning.
Thank you, Pat. Maybe two brief things. Certainly the Curly Recreation Center, obviously a lot of funding is going into that. Thank you. I know the plans are moving forward. Progress is being made. Some residents asked me to get an update on the trees that were removed. I know they're going to be replaced, but can you just highlight to me what the process is of replacing the trees? And if there is a community process of replacing the trees, just make sure that I can be included in it.
Yep. Council, but actually, ironically, the trees were removed last November. And I know people started talking about it in the spring. I think it's just because of the weather. But I mean, in terms of that, there was always a deferred plan. There's going to be all new plantings there, all new bushes and trees. I can get you the plan. I can definitely get you more information on it. It's I know the PFD, Scott Dupree, the PFD Capital Project Manager, and Sue Rice, his supervisor, already worked on getting an answer back. But we can get you definitely a look at the plan. It won't be a whole community process, but I mean, the planting will be nicer. It'll be all new, and we're not just leaving it outside with nothing. Yeah, everything down is gonna come back new and nicer, better.
The Condon Community Center, is the pool still down?
Yes, the pool is down because, and we've been working with BPS Facilities Management for the last year, and then that's something actually for Council Baker also. We definitely did defer maintenance during the pandemic because there is an electrical issue down there where the power source and the pool water is sort of, it's something that should have been done a long time ago, but we've used the pandemic to sort of do the bigger project. So the pool itself should be back online in terms of getting ISD Health in and all the regulatory people in probably by next month.
So when will the pool be fixed?
Actually fine. There's the pool itself doesn't have the pool. The repairs were done on the pool, but now we're doing the electrical work to the power boxes.
Oh, okay.
So I'm hoping that by, I think it was, they said late May. I can get you a better update though, Council. No problem at all from the BPS facilities.
And I think someone mentioned that. I think maybe it was you, Pat, or maybe it was you, Commissioner.
Yep.
No, I think it was the Commissioner. Lifeguarding issues. The Condon School, the BCYF and the Condon, you probably don't have a more diverse group of people, young people that use it. You're literally located in a public housing development, high Latinx, African American, white, Asian. I've mentioned before the services support, but I want to say this in the right way. But what type of education, lifeguarding opportunities are there? Not lifeguarding opportunities. What type of teaching young children, communities of color, about water safety and learning to swim? That's an important issue. It's an important issue to my constituents, especially in the communities of color. I want to make sure that they have the same opportunity to learn to swim as other kids. Some people in my neighborhood have the ability to go to the Boston Athletic Center, which is private, for swimming lessons. I took my kids there. I had the money, and we taught them how to swim. Other kids don't have that same opportunity, and they rely on BCYF to teach their children how to swim.
Yeah.
So, I would like a plan. I would like services for BCYF to teach young kids, communities of color especially, on water safety and in learning how to swim.
Yeah. Counselor, I could tell you that we do have a Learn to Swim initiative. You know what I mean? Nothing is more important. If you know anything about in communities of color, they're most impacted by drownings because of the simple fact that they live in the inner boundaries of the city. They're not on the shore, but kids are just like regular kids. As a father of 5, you know what I mean? Every time they saw the water, they make the mad dash. But we do have Learn to Swim initiatives. And through the Learn to Swim initiatives, we work with our staff, work with those young people to then think about looking at light competitive swim and then into our competitive swim program. Given the year that we've had with the pandemic, it was really hard to even do any of those programs because of the simple fact that they will mean that you have to make contact with an individual. And if you remember at the beginning stages of this, we didn't have a playbook. We just didn't know how people were contracting it, how they were getting it. Even though there were CDC guidelines that said, you're in chlorine water, you might be less accessible. We just didn't want to put anybody in risk. I think that when we are finding ourselves back more in a operable kind of phase that we are a little bit much more comfortable, that's always going to be our priority. I think that one of the reasons we find ourselves short a little bit in lifeguards is because we haven't had our regular population of kids who continue to come in, year out, day in and day out. And then we push them to make sure that they go back and get their lifeguard certification so that they can be ready to work for us. But you can count that that's a big initiative for us. One of the things that we missed last year and what we missed this year was our big citywide swim meet. That didn't happen, and that's a big gap. But I can tell you that our leadership here does a lot of that work. Jeff Mackey is one individual that does a lot of water safety trainings for our guards and for our leadership in the aquatics program. And one of the things that we're even going to do is hopefully push aquatics even much more further and looking how we may look at consolidating some of our practices so that this way we can streamline and provide more opportunities for young people, especially in the schools where, you know, the kids in the convent, you know, we can convince BPS, hey, if kids don't know how to swim, let's make it a situation where one of their periods could be actually learn how to swim for their own safety.
No, well said, Commissioner. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for that commitment. Thank you to the BCYF team. You guys are doing good work throughout the neighborhoods of Boston, and I just want to say thank you and looking forward to working with your dedicated team throughout the city. Thank you, Council Buck.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Next, we're going to go to my questions, and then I will, because we've had 3 members of the public who have been patiently waiting, I'll take public testimony after the first round, and then if any councilors have second round questions, if you can just raise your blue hands or let me know on text or something, just so I know. And yeah, so that's the plan. So just letting the public know that I will, after my questions, I'll take the 3 folks who are in the waiting room. Commissioner, first of all, thanks to your team for sending over answers to a bunch of my questions. I appreciate that. I wanted to, and I was particularly gratified to learn that BCYF's been working with the YE participatory budgeting around that media center for the Tobin lower level. Would love to just get a little bit more understanding about where that is timing wise.
Sure. Pat, you could share a little bit more, Pat, on that. I think it's our media program you're talking about, right?
Yes.
The Tobin?
It's called the Future Media Center.
Yes,
Yes, it's something that what it is with the youth participatory budget is they pick what they want, and then that's sort of what they want downstairs. So we're going to do it in the lower level. There's some rooms down there. There's rooms for the computer lab, and then there's the other Celtics area. There's 2 rooms that are sort of a little bit older, and we're trying to look at whether or not we're going to build it out. We're at the point where we're ready to bring a designer in and look to see if we're going to build it out and build a bigger media center. Try to have it sort of a media center that also does some jobs training for teenagers, and maybe get some involved and bring people in from the local universities or the Honeywells of the world that can come in and talk to them and tell them different things.
Got it. Yeah, no, I mean, I've been in this space, you know, obviously really admire what John Jackson does with all of our youth. And I know that, I know there's been a desire to renovate down there, and would love to just make sure if we're doing it, that we're sort of like, we're doing it up to the most useful standards, right? So, and is there still a thought about having a sort of 3D printing aspect in there, or is that separate?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. And John and Andrew Drew have been involved in the process with us, with the UIE and my staff. And now we're getting ready to start bringing in the designer to start piece.
Yeah. Okay. And I think Councilor Buck, I think John already has 3D printers in there.
Yeah, I thought he might.
He's made some cell phone cases for me, so that the kids designed and gave to me. So
great. Yeah, no, just thinking about how to make that as sort of useful and interactive a space as possible. Obviously, with Wentworth, with Northeastern, with all these places nearby, we do want to do more leveraging of those relationships for our youth. Yeah, and I'll just say, you know, the Tobin's the only BCYF center in my district. Much like Councilor Braden, most of my district is without. And it's led to Private Solutions, the Hill House organization that sort of serves the Beacon Hill West End world. But it is a regret of mine that we don't have more of a footprint in the district. And I think that's felt especially keenly within the district in Fenway, because we've got a growing number of families there. Lots of young families there, and like we're really feeling like not having a school, not having a BCYF, like that infrastructure. I think Hill House has kind of filled that space over and in the eastern side of my district. But just articulating that as something, I mean, it's also a conversation I'm having with BPS. But I think as we think about BPS's footprint in the Fenway, where you're about as far from an elementary school as you can be in the city, it may make sense to talk about BCYF stuff too. So just sort of putting that on your distant radar. Okay. Well, and then I guess just like, this is a little bit kind of a conceptual question, just thinking about, so I had also asked about the Hennigan, it's in Councilor O'Malley's district. but you know, many of my constituents from the back of the hill utilize it. And you guys had said in your replies, as with a number of things, well, this is technically BPS facility, and so you know they sort of manage the facility side, and we manage the programming. And I hear you, Will, talking about sort of the superintendent being ready to, you know, look at these with new eyes, which I think is great. I guess, but it seems to me like historically, overall, part of the problem is like when people think about capital work, like they always think first about their core business. And it seems like we've got a tricky mismatch here where BPS owns a lot of our BCYF facilities, but like if I'm BPS capital planning, like I'm gonna start with classrooms and instructional space. I mean, it's just like, and you know, like, and the stuff that we use every day, all the time. And so it feels like it was interesting to me to see how many of the facilities that counselors were particularly asking about were those shared facilities. And I think one of the things we always worry about with budget oversight with everything is like the stuff that falls between the barrels, right? Like the stuff that's sort of like, nobody quite owns it enough. And so as a result, it like kind of gets passed over. And so I want to push you a little bit more on kind of where we are and what you think the strategy is for making that kind of not the dynamic for our BCYF facilities for the coming decade, because BPS announced a very ambitious capital plan last night, which we'll be discussing with them, you know, in the weeks to come. But even that, like that very ambitious capital plan is going to take a lot of money and a lot of debt, and it doesn't involve touching a lot of these spaces, right? So I'm sort of curious if you could talk a little bit more about the partnership and strategy there.
And that's great, Councilor Bug. I mean, one of the things that I did when I assumed the role here as commissioner and speaking to our team here, one of the things that was long overdue needed was a strong MOU that really positioned both of us to work with one another and not look at ourselves as silos. And I think that there's been a history of a lot of departments always working in silos. And I think by the past administration, Walsh's administration, and now the Janey administration, this need and given the pandemic, we demonstrated how working together has been better for our city. And so we are in the process now that we actually had a signed MOU right at the beginning of the pandemic. We just couldn't execute it fully because of the simple fact everybody went remote. So it was really hard. I think that with the new current MOU, it's going to provide an opportunity for us to look at those big bucket areas, right? Looking at opportunities and where site leadership from BCYF and site leadership from BPS are really talking to one another to think about what are the benefits of us doing programming and supporting our families in a way that they've never been supported before. So that we are very much become very much more intentional about understanding what's happening in the school day so that we could be more supportive at the end of the school day with our students. And one of the other areas that we've always talked about was the facility aspect of it. And it's about making sure that those spaces are one that look equitable throughout our BCYF networks, right? If you look at our BCYF standalones, they get a lot of attention because they're our own buildings. But we want to make sure that the school ones actually look reflective of that. And we have some school sites that some of the aquatic centers, some of the basketball courts look stellar to as well and outdo us to as well. So we have to look at it through a very equitable lens to make sure that our constituents, when they walk into one of our spaces, they're getting the same warm kind of spaces that they're needed. One of the things that's happened a lot is that, especially this given year, since we had to continue to run programming, we have deepened at least better our relationships with BPS in regards to who we communicate, how do we move forward in different plans, because as you're very much aware, they also follow not only state regulations, but they have federal regulations when it came to COVID. And sometimes those regulations impacted how we were going to deliver our work, but they worked with us to figure out a way that we may be able to deliver it moving forward. I think it's still going to be sort of a work in progress, but we hope that with the new amendments that we made to our current MOU, there's going to be much more intentional opportunities for leaderships from both sides to come to the table more frequently to talk about these bucket items so that we're able to address them. Because at the end of the day, when a constituent comes to me and says, why ain't the bathrooms this? And why do they go grotesque? We're not going to throw BPS underneath the bus. They don't throw us underneath the bus. At the end of the day, we need each other. We have standalone facilities, as Pat can attest to, where we are the athletic facility for some schools that don't have the basketball gyms. And we provide the space for them to do the PE, or we provide the computer lab, because sometimes their computer labs are very limited in the number of computers they have. So we know that we depend on one another, and we just have to break that silo atmosphere and sort of make sure that we're working, streamlining ourselves to be at a better place than where we are now.
And Counselor, if I may, I apologize. I just want to jump in on the Hennigan because it was actually before Will's time.
Yeah.
It's probably due for another one. But back in 2008, BCYF capital budget paid $1.2 million to renovate the Hennigan pool. BPS ran the project. We paid for that. We paid for it out of our budget. And again, it's been 11, 12 years, but that was in 2008 dollars. And also, we also put up, we did the new gym floor over in renovation of the gym for $450,000 back around that's 2009. So again, it's been a decade. So we're not patting ourselves on the back, but we do collaborate with BPS, and we do put capital budget money into those buildings. It's a collaboration where they run the project management, and it's our finance, and we're the banker, and they're the construction team, project team. But we just make it as a collaboration. But we don't, they'll tout it on their capital plan. We do also, but it's more so about they're making their buildings better for all of us. Sorry, thanks.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that context. I think it's just tricky because I think that what I've heard on the Hennigan is also kind of a desire to, to re-envision it so that it becomes kind of a top of mind destination for folks. Because I think, I think we all know there are some of our facilities in your portfolio that people really think of as as kind of, I don't know, like, oh yeah, that's a great star location. I'm sure you guys have this with the usage data, right? And then there are places that are a little bit out of sight, out of mind. And I think the Hennigan has fallen into that space. So.
And Hennigan's dear to me. That's where I learned how to swim in 1977. So
there you go. So yeah, we need to be dear to the next generation. So sorry, I just lost my thread for a second. I was going to ask you, switching gears a little bit from facility. Oh, sorry though, just on the Tobin. So you're getting the designer in. What's the exact timeline for when we expect that there would be an actual here's the project, we're bidding it out, or we're doing when is that?
Yep, we're hoping to do something in the fall, to tell the truth. Actually, if there will be a design plot, but we're honestly hoping to do some type of bid. We're hoping to do a bid process by the fall of 2021.
Got it. And what do you guys do in terms of that utilization question? What do you do? Do you have a routine to kind of look at? I know you're putting in the new data management, you're going to know more about outcomes, et cetera, but even just the old school data of utilizations and whatever. And granted, this is not about this past year in the pandemic. I'm just talking about in general. What kind of a evaluation do you guys do of oh, where are we seeing a lot of use? Where are we seeing less use? How could we pivot those? Because I know Councilor Flaherty also had a question that he's asked several times before. And it has to do with kind of, whether our facility hours are matched to the demand. And it feels like a piece of knowing the answer to that is periodically checking is this getting a lot of use? If it's not getting a lot of use, is there something we should be changing about the hours of the programs offered? And I'm just kind of curious what the feedback loop on that looks like.
The feedback, with the old system, it's so dated that people have to actually go in and do stuff manually, right? And so whenever there's an opportunity that something is done manually, there's a widened gap that the data might not be as accurate as we would like it to be, So that's the reason that we kept pushing for a brand new data system that would automatically upload, be able to make it accessible for a constituent when they come in to scan a card or something off their phone that would actually allow us to know when they're utilizing the building and what times they're utilizing. I remember a few years ago when we made the change of hours, I had constituents telling me, hey, there's 30 people in the morning waiting to get into the pool. I went the whole week. It was only one person that was coming to the pool every week. And part of it was that there was this sort of constituents perception of who was coming in, but then what was being recorded was accurate, but it was a different perception. So I think that, you know, that's the thing that we want to do. We want to be able to have data hopefully drive some of our decision-making, drive some of our programs, also drive the lifespan of some programs. We might be doing programs that are so outdated that is really not serving a good number of constituents. And because we keeping it alive for old time's sake, you know what I mean? We're not allowing a new generation to come in and fully utilizing our facilities or even giving us new creative outlets on how we can use our facilities. You know, even when you look at the world of fitness, no one's really doing the barbell and dumbbell stuff. It's all core kind of work. Give them a couple of ropes, a couple of kettlebells, and that's all they need. And that's the physical fitness aspect of it. But we have to look at how our data will hopefully drive our future programming and also drive how we operate, what will be our operational hours given the different communities that we serve. Because each of our community centers are not cookie cutters of each other. Quincy might have an auditorium. John doesn't have an auditorium, but John has a beautiful yard, but Quincy doesn't. So we have to think about how do we best utilize those spaces that benefits the community as a whole.
And what's the expectation for when the data system, the new one's like actually online?
Well, we've been training folks now. There's going to be some other components that have surfaced as we're beginning to test it, but it should be all operable by this fall. You know what I mean? Hopefully we'll transition out of we're probably going to keep our old data system because it takes some time to integrate the systems and to transfer things over. But hopefully we should be having it operable by this fiscal year. And then we'll be having some data.
And is it going to affect, I think it's great to move towards things being free. But obviously the one downside of that is sometimes when things are free, it makes it harder to capture accurate data, because if you used to have somebody, you know, pay something or swipe a membership card or whatever, and now they're sort of able to walk in without that, you can lose your ability to track. So have you guys thought about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, no matter what, we still have to have protocols that people have to check into the building. We have to know who's in the building. I can't allow a 9-year-old just to walk in and not have a parent, because God forbid if he got injured, we don't have the legal consent to provide any medical support to that child. And we won't even know how to communicate to their immediate family members in regards to that. So I think in that aspect is great. I think that, you know, membership is going to be free, but there might be some special instructional, special education, whatever. They might have a smaller fee that's associated with it, because sometimes what happens is, as you're much aware, John has a council here that provides programming. So if John's council has agreed to pay for a Zumba instructor, they may be looking for a fee to offset the cost of the Zumba instructor, but still provide that need to the community. So we still will be able, there'll still be sort of a monetary collection of fees. It just doesn't go to the city. It goes actually to the council, but then we'll be able to track individuals in the registration process so that we can know that program has X number of members, right? We can know in that program that the average age of that member is X, you know what I mean? And then we can then look at how do we formulate a better communication strategy to those populations that want that specialized kind of programming.
Great. And then you mentioned for federal funding, you know, that because we're definitely, you know, I think all over the city right now, we're thinking about what can we use this money on that will really pay long-term dividends, that doesn't set us up for a cliff effect with personnel or whatever. And you guys mentioned sort of new technology like tablets, laptops, STEAM stuff, robotics.
Yeah.
And then funding for tutors, which I think is a sort of personnel thing, but it's a surge, right, that we know we're going to need to do for learning loss.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that category of stuff? Is that stuff that obviously there's going to be a kind of a whole interdepartmental conversation, but is that stuff you've started to express? And then in terms of like combating learning loss and providing students with kind of support and stuff, is BCYF doing anything yet? Like, you know, are we thinking about setting up spaces for this purpose in our centers? Like, are we doing anything to kind of pivot towards that, providing that support specifically?
Yeah, and that's what we were thinking. I mean, you just said it pretty good. When we were thinking about tutors and so forth, we know that during the pandemic, there's been an incredible amount of loss. We know in our conversations with families and also in conversations with school leadership, you know what I mean? They saw that some kids have experienced a loss. We just want to be another support aspect of it, you know what I mean? More locally based for those families who might be looking for that support and get their kids back in an academic track. Like I mentioned, I have 3 kids that are currently now in the Boston public school system. One is struggling academically because the remote wasn't her way of learning, was her best approach. She needed the in-person. She needed the that kind of attention. So we're looking at what that federal funding might be looked at, but at the same time, I know that the Health and Human Services under Chief Martinez is also looking at how we're also using that money to make sure that it is around a COVID recovery kind of aspect as well. So it could probably be redefined as we continue to work through it. And hopefully create an outline to make sure that when those dollars are used are providing opportunities for some real deep impact recovery aspect work that we anticipate that would happen. So when they asked us what we could do with the money, we threw the pie in the sky with tutoring, with technology, with et cetera, because of the simple fact that those are the things that we experienced that if we had them in place earlier, we might have had a deeper impact. And we still need to hopefully develop further the infrastructure for technology, because we know that we can also do more.
Great, thanks. And 2 more questions from me. One is just, can you tell us a little bit more about the racial equity and leadership process, sort of what the goals for that are and what that is?
What, within our department?
This is racial equity and leadership sort of described briefly in the budget book.
I'm trying to look at it. I know that we are working with the administration around racial equity issues, just looking at within our own department. We know that when we did the strategic plan, we looked at it through an equitable lens as well.
Yeah, it was in as a goal in the budget book. That's
okay.
Where it was. So I just wasn't sure what that sort of meant. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Let me get back to you a little bit more on that.
Sure.
Because fine. I think that we are actually working with the city's racial equity office and looking at the sort of the first wave of trainings that are going to be happening, and looking then at ourselves what that work is going to be defined for BCYF. So it's definitely going to be sort of a work in progress, because we know that we have some equity gaps that we need to hopefully close, not only racially, but also staffing equities across some of our sites. But I'll get back to you in regards to that.
Okay, great, awesome. And then my last set of questions is just about SOAR.
Yep.
And I was grateful for the breakdown of the Training and Development Institute that you guys launched last month. It sounds great. And I think, things where we can actually, pay our folks to get that training and get those like skills and certifications. That sounds great. Obviously would love to know on that sort of is there a partnership with OWD? Like, how are you thinking about, is there a way that we can, if our folks get the ServSafe certification or this customer service experience or first aid CPR, like how are we linking them up with jobs that might need those things?
Yeah, that's, it's like I said, one of the things that we want to do is make sure that those particular individuals that actually participate in that program are connected to some meaningful jobs that they themselves identified that they need. So I think that we are working, with workforce development. We are working with other individuals. We also work with the Office of Returning Citizens too, as well, that have other pockets of work opportunities. And then to make sure that they are linked to something that becomes the first stepping stone to what we hope will be a career ladder for those individuals. Because a lot of them always ask for work, but one of the things is that we have to prepare them for what the world of work is going to mean for them. And so we are continuing to broaden that aspect of it, of that work within the SOAR program. Talia would have actually joined us, but she's actually at one of those trainings today, helping to be a part of that process. And she can continue to further elaborate more on it even more. So I can get you even more details in regards to that program from herself directly.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I'm very interested in that work by SOAR. And then also I just wanted to hear a little bit from you about, because obviously last year's budget did include significant new hires for SOAR.
Yeah.
And I've had the pleasure of meeting some of them. Seems great. I just would love to hear from your perspective. Obviously it was then a very strange year, but kind of like, you know, how, in what ways did that additional sort of building of the team achieve the new capacity we wanted? Where did it not? I know one thing I tried to do early on was connect them with, I asked a question, I know you guys don't have a housing side of the program, but I tried to connect them up with the D&D work that's going on informal youth homelessness and stuff, since it seems connected. But just would love to hear a little bit, you know, I think as a council, we're always, you know, being asked to fund new initiatives, and we tend to talk about them in the moment of voting on the funding. But I think it's just as incumbent upon us to ask the question a year in. So how's that going? Right.
Yeah. Well, I think a year in, you know, one of the things that at least has happened is that we've definitely have built up sort of the infrastructure of the program a little bit, but it's very different is that we've never housed resource brokers before. Strategic resource brokers, meaning that these are individuals that are looking at making deep connections and relationships with organizations that can support our clientele as they want to move through a healthy continuum. So I know that we've beefed up that aspect of it. We've definitely have beefed up and well as staffing up a data analyst as well that looks at the trends of what the neighborhoods that are kind of impacted and gives us a little bit more data on how we think about how we strategically deploy the SOAR workers in various neighborhoods, going from a very different model that we had before. I think Talia Rivera has done an incredible job of kind of building up the leadership team, looking at also strengthening her team's capacity on how they approach and engage the work very differently. One that's very intentional, one that at the same time is also deepening his relationships with all the other entities that kind of touch the lives of the clientele. So when you're looking at DCYF, you look at courts, you look at other institutions that might be touching the lives of some of our clientele. It's about deepening that too as well. So one of the things that at least we were able to do is really hopefully begin to use the time to really build up the team that we really wanted to have in place to support the street workers or the SOAR workers. And I keep saying street workers, but the SOAR workers as they do their work so that they have the support to also do the work as they go back out.
Great. No, I appreciate that, and definitely want to continue to follow kind of how the program is doing as it evolves and builds on that base. So, so consider me an interested party on that front.
Okay, no problem.
They're in the basement of the Tobin, so it's technically my district, right? Although I think the Wi-Fi connectivity isn't great down there.
We've been improving them.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna go to public testimony. And that'll be the conclusion of the hearing unless counselors have second round questions. So if counselors can just shoot me a note if you do or raise your blue hand, that'd be great. So I'll go first to Michael Kozu and then to Louisa Harris. So Michael coming in, and then I have an Anthony Meeks who I think is not testifying, but please be in touch with staff if you do want to speak. Michael.
Thank you, Chair, Madam Chair, Commissioner, and City Councilors. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm here to really push again harder for a Grove Hall Youth Center, expanded community center. The community center facility in Grove Hall is just one room now. So when you do, there's been fundamental flaws in the planning and data collection in terms of basically reinforces the racial disparities that Grove Hall young people face. So let's be clear about, as we follow through on this, that Grove Hall Youth Center is needed in a much densely populated neighborhood. In the time I've been in Grove Hall, there's been 6 federal indictments. What we're doing is, without having direct youth programming, not expanded youth center, that you're reinforcing the cradle to a prison pipeline for young people in terms of their options. So we also can look at, we utilized the Burt Gym in the past, we've utilized the Frederick Gym in the past, but both of those gyms have fundamental flaws with their ventilation. We have to jerry-rig systems when it's hot in the summertime, and clearly those gyms are not COVID-19 friendly in terms of being safe as alternatives. So again, we want to push that. You have a site at 4048 Geneva Ave. The plans that you talked about, the planning process, Some of that was conducted before we lost the youth programming when it got converted to a senior center. So clearly, if you did a planning process now, people would argue for a youth center is much more of a greater need. And even at that time when that discussions took place, we were arguing for it had to be connected to that need to be as recreational space connected to the work and to the community center at that point in time. So now that there's not a youth programming out of the community center, people would argue that a youth center is needed. There are no other sites in Grove Hall that is accessible and to all young people that would be seen as a safe haven. That's totally accessible by public transportation and has access to for young people to come and provide the services that are needed. So as you look at the Dorchester area, look at what all the other programs that are available to those neighborhoods, then you contrast to what's available in Grove Hall is very clearly not a comparison. So again, we want to push that you follow through on this. One of the reasons why I was told that there's not going to be a Grove Hall Youth Center was that, oh, the Burke got renovated in 2009 for $50 million, and you got the Grove Hall Library, you got a small community center. That Burke renovation was 15 years too late. It should have been done in 1994. In 1994, when the Burke lost accreditation, it only got $4 million, and the city provided $25 million at the same time to Latin Academy, East Boston, and Hyde Park High Schools for renovation. So Grove Hall has always been shortcut. If you are serious that racism is a public emergency, you need to readdress the substantial disparities that's going on in terms of Grove Hall young people and the long overdue process of getting equitable resources and opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michael. Louisa Harris.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this time to be able to participate in this discussion. Thank you for the attention that you always put on certain facilities. It is interesting how other facilities are completely not taken care of, not even considered. Mr. Morales, you said that you used to be using the Hennigan facility. I'm wondering if you have any idea how many kids, even just in the Bromley and the other part of this Jamaica Plain area, how many kids are in the area and how many seniors? Would you have an idea by any chance? I don't know if I can ask questions.
Lisa, sorry, yeah, no, we just do,
I got you.
I'm
Okay.
happy to follow up with questions about what the BCYF data is on that, but
Got you. It's more like, I think it's a rhetorical question because I've been using I'm a Mission Hill, back of the hill resident, and in the past at least 15 years that I've used the pool pretty consistently, there probably have been at most 4 kids in a swimming program in the afternoon, in the after school. I don't know the school during school time, but in the afternoon, there are probably about 4 kids that do swimming and hardly any seniors. As far as the youth, I think that probably we have seen maybe 10, at most 15 kids who generally sit around in a room and don't do much. I think it's important. We have been trying to stress it for many years. In many ways, it's important for this facility to be top of the line. You know, there is the VA center. There are hospitals that can use it and provide you with funding. The facility is in terrible condition. There has been major problems with security, even witnessed by a journalist that came by to take a look at the facility and reported it. While he was there, someone just entered the facility and walked out. Could have snatched a kid with no problem. So we have been asking to really think about this facility because it's amazing, the facility. It can be used for many things. It can be used for workshop for kids. It can be used for art classes. It can be used for theater. It can be used for senior programs like, I don't know, Tai Chi. It can be used for yoga. It can be used for so many things that the kids themselves too can participate. It's not just for senior. I know Councillor Bach mentioned that in Mission Hill, or at least on her district, there's not really a public facility for seniors. I think if I'm phrasing it correctly, but this one can be an exceptional facility for seniors. There are plenty of people around here. And at least my part of the Mission Hill, the back of the hill, has been growing with families. And you see them walking around back and forth. Thanks to Councillor O'Malley and the work that we've done together, we were able to redo the stairs that go from Hayden Street to Heath Street. And you see people using it. So what we're trying to tell you, there is need. We want to use that facility. I'm not sure why, I'm not sure why certain projects are prioritized and how. I just noticed at Curtis Hall, they're doing something in the front yard when our facility doesn't even have clean showers. So I'm just wondering. So thank you for your attention. I am looking forward to see great things happening for the Hannington.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. And we do have one more public testifier. Mr. Anthony Meeks has joined us, and then I will go to Councillor Edwards, who's joined us as well, and Councillor Flaherty. Mr. Meeks, you have the floor.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Madam. Good morning, residents of Boston, Madam Mayor, and the City Council members. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on this most vitally important matter, the building of the new Youth and Family Center for the Grove Hall area. I am so honored. My name, as it was stated, is Anthony Meeks. I am a child of the Dorchester, Massachusetts area. I am speaking as a resident at this current time. I would love to validate my presence here, but it would take such a long time. And I feel that there are others, even some of the city council members who are present in the chambers, that could help me in that area. But I just would like to move forward. Today I speak as a resident who had wonderful experiences in the former Grove Hall Youth and Family Community Center. And it also prior was called the Bubble. These places of life used to exist in the vicinity of Normandy Street and Geneva Ave. One of the most important part of servitude to the people is access to a place, somewhere to engage the community and engage the people. I place youth and families, a place where youth and families and the people can grow and develop in positive, transformative ways. For me, this place was the old Grove Hall Bubble and the Youth and Family Center, a place where human magic, love, care, kindness, togetherness, recovery, positive development, and family, and most of all, safety had happened. Fact, currently there is no facilities such as the one described above in this area, in the area that have been spoken. At least not any of I'm aware of. Let's see. If there is any facility, I'm not aware of it, and I'm pretty familiar with this area. This area would need a greater and a bigger facility to hold all the capacity the community would need. Currently, the former youth center has been transformed into a beautiful place for our dearest loves, our seniors. This place is a place of connectivity, growth, love, and it is called the Grove Hall Senior Center. I've been there inside and always felt welcome and loved by the seniors, the staff, and it has provided a lot of positive development. Next, there has been and will be testimony regarding the past successes and documented reasons why it's crucial and crucially important to build this new youth and family center, or call it what you may. I personally lived some of those reasons and some of those experiences. I've heard the stories relived by many of who have benefit from these facilities. I've heard hundreds of positive stories by residents and other people, just like people here in the city of Boston, all the positive things you have done in reference or inside of a youth facility center. It was a place where everybody knows your name, and we're familiar with that quote. It was a place where people have left great memories, indelible memories, and still talk about it today. This was the Grove Hall Youth Center, Youth and Family Community Center in a bubble. I know for a fact, living in the Grove Hall and beyond the area, I know for a fact the Grove Hall Community Center in the past have saved, developed, recovered, and have changed countless lives in the area, including the entire community. As a resident and as a fellow citizen of Boston, I testify to these experiences.
Mr. Meeks, you just muted, but if you could just wrap up.
The Youth and Family Center, which also was the bubble, and the bubble was basically the area across the street. It was just a tent, but it was a loving tent. The kids came there constantly. Families came there constantly. We had all kinds of events there. It leaked. The kids didn't care. They came and they mopped the water up. They played basketball. They played indoor football. We had a computer lab. And it was just a tiny, as it was said, is a tiny bubble, but it was a living bubble. And everybody came there. So the bubble.
I just have to ask you to conclude, just because we
absolutely. I am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So with the community residents, social service entities, and anyone who want to offer a positive, productive outcome to the development of such project, we will have to have open opportunities so that they can offer their recommendations and contributions in all facets of the new youth center that's going to be developed there. There's one important point. I'm going to skip one paragraph. The city of Boston would have to do something very groundbreaking. Will be able to do something very groundbreaking, creative, revolutionary, and innovative human connectivity. If there is a new youth and family center built right across the street, we have the opportunity to have it right next door to the senior citizens facility. And someone spoke of generational programming, generational connectivity. Well, if we build a youth and family center right next to our senior citizen, I'm sure the city of Boston will have the opportunity, to create that kind of avenue, that kind of connectivity by just having both facilities right next door to each other. I would like to thank everybody for the opportunity to allow me to speak here. And I certainly hope that we will get our new facility. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that testimony. We really appreciate it. Next up, I've got Councilor Edwards. Councilor Lydia Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank all of BCYF, your staff, and the hard work that you've been doing. And I just want to, my questions will be predominantly about my district, specifically looking at the different centers and really honestly seeking some updates on their development. We'll start first with the North End and the Nazaro Center and the building of the new, I guess, youth facility program or building or whatever you want to do. I know $30 million was potentially going to be dedicated to building a whole new center. And then there was also a real question about what we're going to do with the current gem that we have in the Nazaro Center, making sure we're still a community space, one that we would value, and we in the North End especially want to make sure it maintains its community space and value. So that's one. Just some updates on the Paris Street pool in East Boston. I know we were going to do that last year. I don't know what delays with the pandemic had, so I don't think anyone begrudges or thinks that everything's running on the same timeline, but I would just love some updates on that. And then just making sure I check my notes. 1 second. With the development in Charlestown, specifically the Bunker Hill housing development, there's going to be a whole community space that is a build out in Charlestown in the housing development. And I didn't know if the city had any voice or any potential partnership in that. So, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go through all of them because I know I'm late. Oh, I wanted to, yeah, so specifically on the Nazaro Center, when will the RFP be out? That might be a good directed question. Finally, I've seen an increase in violence actually in East Boston around Maverick Landing. And I first of all want to say thank you to SOAR, the Boston team, for their work. Every time we've gotten on the phone, we've come together as a team. Their expertise is amazing. And I was just wondering about additional resources or professional development in my district for SOAR and community partners like Maverick Landing. Will the Street Safe grant funded by the Boston Foundation to enhance, I think it's anti-violence measures, be allocated at all in District 1? And so I think that's a lot, but hoping to just get some clarity.
All right, I'm gonna let Pat maybe tackle some of the facility stuff, the SOAR state, and you said the Boston Foundation Street Safe initiative?
Street Safe grant, yeah.
All right, I need to maybe go back and look at that. I knew that our first wave of the violence interrupters was funded through the Boston Foundation, but then that was basically integrated by the city of Boston and took over because it was a 3-year grant. So I'll actually have to go back and talk to Talia about if this is a separate grant and what it might be specifically being used for in that aspect. I know that East Boston continues to be one of the neighborhoods that we continue to talk about, especially around stronger violence intervention measures. You know what I mean? It's a very unique community. It's in regards to that, because of the simple fact that some of the impact players in that are sometimes newly immigrant young people that are new to the city. You know what I mean? Trying to adapt and et cetera. So I know that continues to be sort of a focus for the department in regards to East Boston and the work that we're doing there. And then I'll let Pat talk a little bit about the facilities aspect of it, the North End and so forth. I think these are all things that are hopefully going to be coming back online, and hopefully we're going to be working with Public Facilities Department to make sure where those things will be moving. Pat, if you want to share more about the facility side.
No problem at all. Thank you, Commissioner and Councilor Edwards. Thank you. In the North End, the request for proposals have not been done yet. However, we do have money in the FY22 budget to start the process for the new building of the community center, which is the location is going to be where the current BCYF Marabella pool is located down on Commercial Street. The Parks Department just finished a $14 million project with the Popolo Park, which looks fantastic. So I think we're going to sort of add on to that. And then there has been no final decision made about the Nazaro. I know there is a big push to keep the Nazaro Community Center building by all ages, but especially the seniors. Yes. And they run a nice program. I know them all very well, and several of them have my phone number and my cell number, so they call me when everything they need down in the North End, so directly. So they're wonderful to deal with. So on the North End, we are definitely, the money's in the budget. It is definitely, there's money in the FY22 though to start that RFP process, and we're working with PFD. We've already had discussions with them about that in the North End. In East Boston, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, you have any questions about the North End? Sorry.
Yeah. In terms of the RFP process, I think that would be one of the better opportunities we have to build community. And so, that the community went and engaged with the Boston School of Architecture and had graduate students come over and did a whole community kind of process design of a community space, not expecting, obviously, for you guys to take that as full on absolute, this is the design done by, your professional folks for your absolute, but I would love to know that is looked at and might possibly inform your RFP.
Yep.
And that before and when actually not before, but while the RFP is out, that there's maybe a community check-in to talk about that. Because if the RFP is dedicated toward a community space, that's really important for me. If the RFP isn't, then I really am concerned about the city's commitment.
Nope, absolutely. And during the study, we had 3 community meetings, and I believe we
I
planned
remember.
at least 2 or 3 more for the design project. I do know about the Art Institute also. The design people did get that during the study. And actually, we incorporated some of their ideas into some of the proposals that we did. So they were definitely looped in, and we'll continue to loop them in. I know that it's a matter of getting a project manager assigned, and then we'll probably start the design project process in FY22, which is RFPs as part of the design process. But there'll definitely be community input during that process.
And I think you were going to go to the
Boston. Yes, Paris Street Pool. That project's been actually underway since last fall. So we're in the construction over there, and we're moving along. And I believe that the construction, that's an $8 million project of the Paris Street Pool, following the $13.1 million project across the street at the Paris Street Community Center. So which is completed and opened up and been serving food and other things daily. But the capital project at the pool should be finished, we're hoping, by the end of the year, and to get that reopened up for the year 2022, during FY 2022.
Okay.
I believe Charlestown, I know you mentioned something about the Bunker Hill housing development. I know that the city had input in that. I believe that the BHA may have made a decision. I'm not 100% sure. We can check to maybe go with a local nonprofit, because we do have the community center right across the ball fields on the other side of Charlestown High in the athletic building. We are also doing the study in Charlestown, though, to build a standalone new community center. So that's it. We've already had a community. We've actually had one community. I believe your office was represented. We had one community meeting on that, virtual, and more coming, and to pick a location and to build hopefully a new community center in the coming years in Charlestown also.
Would that be incorporating the golden age and our youth as well? Are you looking to get rid of the golden age?
Nope, absolutely not. And actually, the golden age.
My seniors there would also be asking that question.
No, that would never happen. The golden age is a senior center that we have great relationship with, and Megan does a great job over there. And actually, the golden age is actually owned by the BHA and Wind Management, the property itself. So the city doesn't even have the right to we can close it, but we don't have the right to do anything to it. So, but we definitely would have something where it's a collaborative with the seniors, and we were talking about connectivity with the age groups. Any type of community center would involve the seniors maybe coming over in better days, when we can get them into a van or a minibus and move them over to the community center and work with the kids. Because they do have life experiences that I think are relevant and important to the youth of the city to learn.
Of course. And gavel so soon. Gavel and raised eyebrows, Councillor Bach. I see. You know what? Very well. I will just follow up in email. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wouldn't read anything into my facial expressions. All right, Councillor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm always happy to yield my time to my district colleague from East Boston, Charlestown on the north end, if she has an additional question. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and to Commissioner, and it's great to see you guys. Always great to see PMAC, my neighbor, one of the unsung heroes of Boston Centers for Youth and Family, who learned everything he knows from my former Chief of Staff, Bill Doherty. So great to see you, PMAC. And I want to just touch base, getting a lot of calls and emails from my constituents and friends and supporters in Grove Hall for a youth center. Tony Meeks knocked it out of the park. He's out there, he's doing the work, and he outlined the reasons for it. I date back to Grove Hall during the Safe Neighborhood Initiative days when I was an assistant DA, and working with folks over there to try to increase opportunities, and with Sister Virginia and Brother Charles, and there's just so many folks that were over there that just did great work. So anything we can do to kind of get a youth center for Grove Hall in the queue would be appreciated on this end, and we'll continue to advocate for it as their at-large counselor. And then, as PMAC can attest to, if it wasn't for folks like the late great Anna Cobb or Helen Alex, Kathy Davis, Engine Horn, Mr. Costello, Mike Farmer, Joey Curran, all those folks played instrumental roles in keeping kids on track, or mentorship, or almost like a big brother or a big sister. And that made the difference in so many lives. So the role that youth and family plays in sort of nurturing our youth and future leaders is tremendous. And so the more of that interaction we can have with our youth across the city, I think we'll be a better city for it. And so anything we can do, and I've always had this issue, and I know Commissioner Morales, we've worked on it in the past, is just making sure that the hours of operation, and I know that I submitted those in our initial working session, but just making sure that the hours of operation are sort of are conducive to the hours that our youth in particular, but also our seniors, the ones that have our senior centers, that they kind of coincide with sort of that routine, that schedule. And we had a situation under previous administration, under the Menino administration, where you had, youth and center families were, the workers were leaving as the kids were showing up. And that's never it's not a good look, number one, but two, to make sure that doesn't work. So making sure, again, our hours of operation, and particularly during the summer months, making sure that the facilities are up to snuff, and that the pools are open, and that the gym facilities are open, and that we have programming. It's one thing to have a physical structure and a gym, but if there's no organized sort of leagues, if you will. So, and again, that's going to be, that's up to you folks to sort of do all the planning, and it's up to us to make sure you have the resources to make that happen. This summer in particular, obviously, unfortunately, we're expecting, or at least people are forecasting, that it may err on the side of being busy, and there may be some violence. So we want to try to cut that off as quickly as possible. So getting our Centers for Youth and Family up and running earlier, making sure that there's programming, expanding the age potential as well, to kind of capture some kids that if there's no program for them, it's just a matter of time till they, if this expression when we were kids, if you don't find trouble, trouble will find you. And so anything we can do to make sure that we're up and running, particularly as school season ends. There's always been somewhat of a lag in our city where things usually don't start. The red shirts didn't start until July, et cetera. We need to start our programs as quickly as possible, get kids engaged, get them involved in leagues, and do what you guys do best, which is, again, the stuff that the folks that I mentioned, that I grew up with, the PMAC grew up with, that were game changers, and they change lives, and we want that to continue. So appreciate the work that you do. You have your hands full, but make sure that you're letting us know how your facilities are, and what needs to be in the capital pipeline, and a last-ditch advocacy for a youth center in Grove Hall. They deserve it over there, and the folks that are over there on the ground doing the work are also advocating as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor.
Commissioner Morales, did you have any comments in response to that?
No, I have to thank Councilor Flaherty, especially when pre-COVID, when we were looking at having the community meetings in South Boston, the fact that he's a native and son of South Boston, supporting the work, supporting the direction that it was going, and especially the support that we needed to make sure that we ended up getting the additional resources we needed for that building was instrumental. And so, and I support some of the other councilors too that supported it too, Councilor Flynn too as well. So, but we are doing our due diligence. We do want to definitely be back at work. I think that we are a department that signed up to help people, and that's what we're eager to do. And we want to be back to helping people in the capacities that we've always done, but at the same time taking new tools into the trade to further expand our work.
Great, thanks so much, Commissioner. Councilors Braden, Mejia, Edwards, Flaherty, who are all still on, if any of you do have a follow-up question, comment, Councilor Edwards, if you feel you were cut off, speak now, or else we're gonna.
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, seeing none, and seeing as we heard from 3 members of the public already, and grateful to them again for their comments, I think that we are ready to adjourn. So with that, this hearing, the Ways and Means Committee is adjourned. Thanks so much, Commissioner and team. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
think we have the revolving fund next, I think.